So my name is Wagner Silveira, and I'm a senior program manager on the Logic Apps team, and we're going to be focused here today is what is happening with local development for Logic Apps Standard. Before I start, how many people here is working with Logic Apps Standard today? Okay. And how many people didn't or was using Logic Apps consumption before, but is not working with Logic Apps Standard? Okay, not many people. So I'll do that. Why I was asking this, I have a little bit of a recap on Logic Apps Standard on some of the concepts. How much I'm going to spend time on that recap depends on you guys, right? So we do that at a quick recap. Then we're going to talk about some of the new tools that are there to help us on the Logic Apps development process. Then we're going to talk a little bit about what is next. And the reason I'm saying a little bit is because tomorrow on our roadmap session, we're going to spend a little bit more on that. So we're going to be focusing on the things that is going to be for the next 6-8 months, while tomorrow we talk a bit more about the roadmap for that. So when I'm thinking about the recap, first of all, let's just remember a bit of the Logic Apps Standard model, because it's quite different from what was from consumption before, right? When, while consumption was every single Logic Apps was its own resource, and you have to combine them to do stuff. When you're talking about Logic Apps Standard, now you have more of an application where you put in a whole lot of workflows that are supposed to do something together inside that same package. So, and that package is really locally a file structure with a whole lot of components there. Behind the scenes, it looks a little bit like this. You're going to have one or more workflows, right? And we're going to have a set of metadata or other components that you can use. You have the reference to your connections. You have the reference to your parameters. And you might have, depending on the type of workflow that you're doing, a group of other components that's going to help you, like maps, schemas, and even binaries, right? This package, when you're deploying, is going to be running on what we call now a Logic Apps Standard application, which is hosted on a workflow standard plan, right? And then with that, you can have like multiple applications running on the same plan, and then you can define your capacity based on that. The application also has reference to a whole lot of other Azure components that helps us to run, like the storage accounts, the application sites for you to have your telemetry, and depending on the case integration account, if you wanted to move some of those schemas and maps to an external resource so you can have it shared across multiple applications. And the other thing that you have is also the ability to have Azure connections, right? That points to services. When you're thinking about connections there, we introduce a new model, right? And that's why on that one I'm talking specifically about Azure connections. Because we also have now the ability to do built-in connections. And what is this? What is a built-in versus Azure? While before, every single one of those connections was yet another Azure resource that is running outside of the Logic Apps application, and because of that, not able to use the same components, use the same process that you had on Logic Apps, right? Now you have the ability to get that, that connection and run in process with the rest of your Logic Apps, right? So that's what a built-in connection is. It's roasted and run inside the same Logic Apps process that you have for the rest of the workflows that is running. What is the advantage of that? It's a better performance, but most important, because it's inside of the same process, whatever the connections that a process has to VNet or to access to on-premises, the built-in connections are going to be able to have as well. So when you're using built-in connections, you're able to translate from the workflow process down into the virtual network integration or down to the on-premises. When you're talking about Azure connections, it's a bit different, right? Because this is running as a resource outside in Azure. Then what's going to happen with that is I come from workflow to an external resource that is running on the Microsoft network, not on your own in-process. And because of that, it does not able to come back down to virtual network. Okay? So as much as possible, if you wanted to use some of those resources like the built-in VNet integration or isolation for private endpoints, you should be using built-in connections. So let's shift gear a little bit and talk about the development modes that we have, right? The Logic Apps consumption, one of the big things was it was really easy to start. You just go to the portal, you create something in the portal, you're able to use it, right? We still give you the ability to do that with Logic Apps Standard. You can create an application, and you're going to have that application there ready for you to use, be able to create multiple workflows, doing all of that in the portal. The biggest advantage is that the only prerequisite that you have is Azure, a browser accessing to our Azure subscription, ready for you to use. Still have dev and testability, right? So you can create the things, you can run like from the portal, you can request depending on how you're doing the things, but there is no debugging ability because you're running on the portal. There is no built-in source control support. You have to get whatever you do, bring it down to a package, and then push that to source control. And any changes that you're doing is saved directly on that resource. So it's a bit of like a development in production, unless you electing that to be your developer sandbox, right? So any changes that you do there, you don't have like the ability to stage changes and deploy. You save is there, right? When you're looking at local development, you have a set of prerequisites. You need VS Code, you need Functions Core 2, you need the .NET Core. You have all of that in place before you're able to start, right? And some people find that a bit of a steep curve depending on what you have or what is your background. But it gives you local development, it gives you local run, and even the ability to debug your workflows. That is, because it's on all the files there is sitting on the file system, you have connectivity to source control, right? Whatever source control you elect to use, you're able to push that code directly. And you have the ability from local development to right-click and deploy, but we all know that friends don't let people right-click debug, deploy. But it's there if you needed to do like a quick test. Talking about friends don't let friends right-click deploy, right? The DevOps model for Logic Apps Standard is a bit better than it was in consumption. The first thing that we have here is now we're doing that Logic Apps application deploying as a unit of deployment, right? And the other thing is you have your code and you have your infrastructure separated to a point, right? We know there is like some dependencies or some things that is kind of a little bit more tight coupled that we would like to, especially when we're talking about connections and we're talking about parameters, right? But you have the ability to deal with that and deploy infrastructure, then deploy code, or deploy code multiple ways. So with that out of the way, just a little refresher of what was Logic Apps standard and the things that we have to do there. Right, what is new from an integration developer? Like if you day-to-day creating Logic Apps, what is the things that are new there? There's a couple of new tools that is being available, was about to be available, that is making your life a little bit easier. The first one is like the improvements of the designer, right? We all knew that especially when you come into Logic Apps Standard compared to consumption, the designer performance was much slower than when comparing to consumption, right? And we make a set of the improvements on that. We have a new tool that was like, especially for the people that was coming from integration background and working with Beanstalk, that has the ability to do that on Beanstalk. That is kind of a visual data mapper. So we have that available. We are working on a way for you to do custom code, write your code and inject in Logic Apps and call that from Logic Apps instead of requesting an external resource like a function or something like that, and we're going to take a quick look at this. And finally, for people that has investment on consumption, like how are we going to be bringing all of that into a standard? So we created an export tool that allow you to bridge that gap, right? So let's start with the designer. First thing is better performance, right? Is one of the videos that we did was like for a large workflow, while it was still loading in the old designer, we had it loaded, change it, and almost save before the other one was able to load. So it improved the performance, and the reason for that is like how we actually dealing with the references of each one of those components, right? There is a really a good blog post that I can share with you guys later on to like all the changes that we did to try to improve that. Then, from a usability point of view, especially if you have like large workflows, it's easier to find that because you can zoom in and zoom out, and it's much more responsive for that, but also have the ability to use the mini-map to find exactly where you wanted to go on your big Logic Apps and access that. From a search point of view, we introduced it, especially when you're talking about searching in the designer, the main thing that you're doing is like searching for new actions to add, right? And then when you have 400 plus Azure connections, that can be a little bit hard to do. So we improved the searching in a couple of ways. One is, if I'm not interested in Azure connections, I wanted to keep things on built-in, you have the ability now to say, from the runtime, I only wanted to watch the in-app, which is what they call in the built-in connections, and then automatically it's going to remove all the Azure connections for you. But also the ability to search just for your custom code or the custom connectors and things like that. And when the results is also trying to bring you the most relevant results inside each one of the components, right? And then after that, you can go and see more instead of like showing the connector, then showing all the actions, then like less clicks for you to access something that is useful. The token picker, that is like sometimes the bane of the life of everyone working with that, because you open the action to do something. First thing it do is like get in your face, and then you have to find ways to close it to then start writing again. Is a lot less obtrusive now. It's now moved to the side, and you have the ability to do either the functions or the reference of the other actions. There on the side, you do a click. But also, from a usability point of view, right? If you're in the middle of something already using the keyboard, like you're in the middle of an action and you wanted to add a token, you can do like a slash, and then from the slash it already opens up. Do you want to get a function? You go to get one of the tokens and use everything using the keyboard. Like keep you a lot more in the zone than having to move to the key, to the mouse and come back. Although, like old school like me, I end up going to the keyboard all the time. And finally, the expression area got a bit of a revamp. It's a bigger area that you can scale up, right? So like you can open up a bit more. And just to give an example, this is not a huge expression, but that expression you wouldn't be able to see on the previous thing before. You have to be scrolling back and down to find out exactly where you were. With that one, we have the things, a bit of a better IntelliSense so you know what we're doing with those expressions. Then, when you're talking about the data mapper, that was something that a lot of people was asking about, is one component that we're introducing on VS Code, right, as its own extension at this stage. It allows you to visually do the mapping between components, like with people that used to do that on Beanstalk, but also people that was working with other tools like MapForce or things like that. Is the same kind of idea, right? Is a visual designer, and we try to go through an approach where you focusing just on the areas that you wanted to map. So is focus on the source or on the target instead of necessarily on the source, right? We're going to take a quick look at that. It has a set of built-in mapping functions, not functoids, right? Functions. I have to say that because everyone calls that functoids, even me, but it is like functions. One thing that is really interested on that is has a map checker. So if your map has like a definition in terms of what is required, what is not, at the end of the process, it shows if you actually have that the result valid because you might not be mapping all the things that are required, right? Supporting today XML and JSON on both ways. So you can start with a XML on the source, JSON on the destination, or the other around. And I have the ability today to do manual mapping tests. So you finish doing the things, you have the test button, you can put your source sample and execute, so give you the reasons why that's failing. And let's see if the demo goes with us, because that's the first demo, and that one is going to be live. No pressure. Cool. You all can see that? Yeah? So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to be creating a new project, right? And my project is under my working folder on 23 and demos, data mapper demo. And so, oh, sorry. I have a stateful workflow that is called data mapper demo. And opening current window. So this is a project. I kind of trust this guy called Wagner. All right. And then from here, what we're going to do is now introduce the data mapper, a new map. And you're going to find that as a new extension. So you can have the data mapper extension installed together with your Visual Studio, your Logic Apps Standard extension, right? I'm going to be creating a new map, and that map is going to be called Order Summary. So it's going to be starting the process, and from here, it's going to open now your canvas. You can introduce your source schema, and in my case, I'm going to add a new one, and my new is an order. Right, so it opened up, show the thing. I'm going to do the same thing for the target, and my target is not an XSLT, is actually a JSON schema. And here is what I said that is like working from the destination point of view. You're showing the destination, and when I select one object on that destination, what it's going to do is focus on that object for you to map. And from here, we can say, what are the components on my source that I wanted to map, right? So in my case, I have a couple of items. I wanted the order ID, I wanted the customer ID, I wanted the order line, a list of order lines. right? And from that, I wanted the product ID, the unit price, and the quantity. Actually, I don't even need the product ID. I just need the unit price and quantity. So the idea of this one here is from that the order with a list of order lines, I'm going to have an order summary that just change a little bit the order number for the format that I have, which is customer plus order ID. And I'm going to summarize the total across all the order lines as a full total. Okay? Fingers crossed, that's going to work. So as you see here, instead of me seeing the whole set, imagine that I have like one of those EDI formats like Martin is going to have tomorrow or the next day that has like 300 items. I don't need to focus on those 300 items. I only bring the ones that I needed to work here. If I forgot anything, I just go to the list and bring it again, right? And I can search for that. But let's start that map. So first thing I'm going to do on that one is I'm going to be adding format date, right? And then it added here. So my format date is going to be from the, look at that, I forgot the order date, right? So go back, add the order date. Now it's available. And if I click on that, I need the order date and the format that is going to be custom. The format is year dash month dash day, right? And that's that is this one. This goes to order date. Then for my order number, what I wanted is a concat, because the same way there was not a Logic Apps demo without Twitter in the old days, is not a mapping things without a concat, right? So let's add a concat. And on that one is going to be my custom ID dash custom value. And another field, the order ID. Order ID. Okay, and that goes to my order number. All right, last one that I'm going to do here is just mapping the customer ID directly. So reuse that. And then finally, what I wanted to do is I wanted to, first for me to get the order lines, I needed to multiply quantity by unit price. So let's multiply order by quantity price. And in here, I have the quantity times the unit price. But I want to summarize that, right? So let's get some space here. So I wanted to go and do a sum of all those sub-items. Let me take one of those out and get the next one. Okay, so my collection is the items that I multiply, that I'm summarizing is exactly the multiplication of quantity versus unit price that is available here, right? And my scope is where the group of things are, is the order line, that is the list of items. So my order line, right? And then goes to total, right? It's showing as a thing, but that is one of the known issues from preview. So with that in place, I can save. Okay. Did it save? Sorry? In format 8. In here. And I still needed to do this. I almost did it again. Let's see. Sorry, but the old, there is still something wrong here. There we go. This should do now. Yeah. Okay. So let's do a test on this map. And I'm just going to get that sample message. And if I did everything right, should be running and come back with the values, right? So one of the things that is thanks. One of the things that I got from this, there is something that we wouldn't be able to do on BStock maps, for example, is that summarization there would need to do like serious XSLT or C# code to get that. And thanks to XSLT3, we're able to do all of that. So this is the other thing to just show here. And taking in consideration the time, I'm not going to just put that on a logic apps and just prove that that also runs from logic apps, right? Because we have other things to look at. But one thing that I wanted to show is all of those artifacts that we created here are actually included on the artifacts folder, right? So the map definition, that is a set of YAML files. Like here is the metadata that allows the engine to generate XSLT. But it does that. Every time that you save, it automatically generates a proper XSLT tree, right? And then you can see here that it's actually using the format date, the concat, the sum, all of those that are native from XSLT tree. And the schemas are also being loaded in the application. So from here, that Logic Apps application would be able to simply go and insert that map inside your workflow and run, right? But we have other things to look at, so let's go back to the presentation. I said presentation. Cool. So data mapper out of the way. One thing worked, right? We have 3 other to go. So one of the things that is coming really soon, and that is currently in development, is now you not only have your data mapper, but you should be able to create your own functions, right? And customize those functions. I know there's exactly because of the background of people that is using that, they have ability to create their own custom functoids, either with a code or with XSLT, right? It's a common request from people that start using the data mapper. The initial scope is going to be based on XSLT3 and XPath 3.1, right? And on your custom function, you'll be able to either execute an XPath function, like specific for what you want. You could either reference an inline XSLT or create that custom function ready for you to use. Kent was quite a gentle and created a demo for us, right? So I'm going to just show you what we're doing here. So what we're trying to do on this one is trying to convert a date to a date of birth to age, right? When you're trying to do the thing that was not working. So what are you going to do? It's going to be creating now a new custom map code where you can put like all those items, right? And inside of that, you will be able to create your custom functions, right? On that one, it has, for example, a little bit of snippet of code that does age into date of birth into age, right? Doing the calculation using a round. And once you have that, you would have the ability to create a definition where you say what is the inputs and outputs parameters that you're expecting for that function to run, right? When you have all of that in place, what's going to happen is with that definition, you'd be able to see that a new function into your map, which is what you're going to be doing now, right? So in your functions now, you're going to have the new age, and you're able to bring it in, and you find exactly those inputs that you said, like give me a date of birth. From here, it's going to be connecting. And when you save that, you're able to test, right? And we don't want it to give up Sandro's date of birth, but we're going to find exactly how old he is, if that is right, right? And according to that, it's like 45.2 years old. And Sandro is giving the thumbs up, so it seems like the thing works fine. Right? So this is the idea behind of the custom functions. You would be able to work with that and creating your own functions. Right? So, but this is specific for map, right? There are other places where you're probably going to need it to extend logic apps in terms of either with a bit of code that you don't have, or sometimes for processing where writing all of that, although it's possible to do on a logic app workflow, is going to be too complex. And you wanted to have like the ability to get that code, a business logic, and bring it to the logic app straight away. So we are working now on supporting .NET Framework custom code. And from the people that is based on from a BizTalk background, we are working on .NET Framework first because that would be unblocking like that BizTalk migration scenarios. So the idea here is you have a bit of code in .NET Framework, and you're able to bring it to Logic Apps, reference that inside of Logic Apps application, and run it from there, right? So with that, the project structure is going to be expanded right now to a workspace. So it's a bit more like a solution where you're going to have your function folder, you're going to have your logic apps folder, and from there you're able to create those items. The advantage that putting all those two things together in a workspace is you'll be able to debug both of them. You can like stop on the logic apps things, go inside your function code, and we're calling that function exactly because it's based on the function's runtime, since behind the scenes those two are working together. Right? And it's going to give you like full support for dynamic schemas, input and outputs. The way that you write your code, and you're going to see that on the demo, and the annotations that you do there is going to give you the metadata for the rich experience that you have on the logic apps action. Like all the inputs are going to be there. You don't have to kind of guess what you're expecting it to be. And because it runs with the same workflows where you have your logic apps, you don't have to instantiate another function, right? You'll be able to now get this code and logic apps running in the same process. And back to what we discussed before, because of that, this are going to be running on the VNet integration and all of that. So let's see an example of that one. So we're going to be creating a new project, and you're going to see here, like really soon, you're going to see a new project type for that, right? And that new project type is exactly based on that idea of having a workspace defined, right? So when you're doing that, you're going to select, like today, the place, and you're going to give a workspace name for that whole group. Then from there, what is going to be the logic apps, a project that you want to create, and what is going to be the namespace for the code that you're writing. So all of that is going to be taken into consideration when setting up the things, and also going to be creating a first logic app for you to instantiate. So you have you're instantiating the code, and you're instantiating the logic apps, and all of that is going to be getting together in the project, right? So you're going to see here now a workspace, a functions folder, where your code project is going to be, and a logic apps folder. On the code, we're going to be like creating a predefinition, like a boilerplate template, just like the hello world that you get with functions at the beginning. From there, you can go and change the things for the project as you want it, right? You'll be able to include the input parameters on your code. We also be able to get like complex types parts. So when you getting the outputs, this output can be based on a complex type, and all of that is going to be presented. So with the code in place, you'll be able to build this code project, like doing the .NET Restore and the .NET Build, right? And when it finished that, it being placed the references on logic apps. So what you're going to find now is a new folder with lib and .NET 4.2. People that was working with the assemblies and the .NET references already that are used to that structure is exactly the same place where the code is going to be adding. But it also adds that functions.json, which is exactly similar to what you saw in Data Mapper, is now your reference for the inputs and outputs of this new function code. Right, so you see like the input schema, the output schema, and all of that. So what we're going to be doing now is open the designer and then inject that code inside the process here, right? So you add in an action, and the action is going to be the call local function, right? Then you select what is going to be the local function that is coming from that definition that you had there. And when you select that one, you're going to be able to add the parameters, right? So in my case, I had like a zip code and a temperature, and you'll be seeing all of that. All of this can be the reference from the previous step on the workflow or anything like this, right? In this case, he added an inbound schema, and from that inbound schema, he's going to do the references and all of that. Okay. So now we have the ability to add a new function and items like that. Rick. Okay, I have 5 minutes. No pressure. Okay, so I'll just let it run one time, right? So I just wanted to show the support for the complex time. The complex types. And you see like all the items that you have on your complex type of the output is going to be available there. Mm-hmm.
If that's a normal function, does that mean I can pull in NuGet packages so I can share business logic across projects?
I need to check with the guys, but I think it's that's the idea. Mm-hmm. Okay, so the question is if that is a function, would be able to package that as an NuGet and then like share across the other projects. I have the impression that yes, but I'll double check with the team. Or otherwise, it's a really good feature request. Okay, so that is just running, right? And then from here, I think it's just an expedience of time. You guys have to trust me. The thing is going to be running, especially since it's a recording, it's going to work, right? And the idea is like you're able to run and you're able to set breakpoints because it's everything is inside that process. So from a local development point of view, we're able to debug your code. From a runtime point of view, that code is going to be running together with the logic app, so you don't have to implement a new function just to have business logic inside your logic apps. Okay, so let's stop that one and go to the next. Cool. So the next thing that I'm going to show here, and not going to be running a demo on that one, but I show where you can find and you can play with your own demo, is the ability to export in Logic Apps standard, export to Logic Apps standard, right? So this is available as a Logic Apps standard extension in Visual Studio Code. On the new, on the extended extension, you're going to have a new button for the export experience, right? We have a number of videos on that one, so I can share with you guys later. But the whole idea is export now a group of Logic Apps consumption. And when I'm talking about consumption, is both ICE Logic Apps or purely consumptions inside a region as a Logic Apps project, right? Is going to be pre-validating those Logic Apps, so getting a group of those Logic Apps and say, can I actually export? Because the whole idea of that is exporting something that is working for you, or you have a set of other steps just to go and complete, usually around configuration. If you have Azure connections as part of that that is not able to convert, by default is going to try converting Azure connections into built-in connections, because that is one of the advantage of Logic Apps standard, right? So you're trying to do the translation, but for example, Outlook or a Salesforce connector is not going to have a relative on built-in, so it's still going to generate that as an Azure connection. If you have that and you wanted to test the Logic Apps once it finishes, it will also going to be deploying that connection. Big caveat here is just like when you deploy new connections on Azure today, depending on the type of connection, you're still going to have to go and reauthorize that, right, as a manual step. But the connection is deployed, and the references to that is deployed. And finally, the other thing that it does is getting all those connections, and when you're creating connections today, it's hard coding the whole set of the subscription. Like the whole location of the connection is hard coded, right? It has the subscription, the resource group, and the name of the connection. With that, we're going to be abstracting some of those things that can change across environments, like subscription ID, location, resource group location, and push that web settings. So your connections.json is going to be simpler to move around. Okay? So the idea was to do like a demo, but I don't want it to keep you guys like for another 10 minutes after that. So let's go and talk a little bit about what's coming next from Logic Apps Standard. So at least what's coming on the next 6 to 8 months, or things that we're working today. And a lot of that is improving 2 areas that you didn't see any of the things there. The first one is like the support to DevOps. We just touched in one point here, like connections and parameters is a bit of hard coding, right? There's a whole lot of things there that is harder for you to work. You have to go and manually do changes. We already did some improvements as part of the export tool that is supporting parameterization in a way, but today you still have to go, if you have like a project that is not being exported from consumption, you have to change your connections.json manually. You still have to understand how to deal with the permissions between Logic Apps and things from local versus cloud, which means like a key versus managed identity. So a lot of things there that you have to think about, and we're trying to improve that. But the other area that is like making harder for people to use a Logic Apps standard locally and end up preferring to use the portal is the onboarding experience. I have to install, I have to remember all the references for extensions that I need. I have to install .NET Core, I have to install this and that. And all of that, none of this is mentioned on the extension, is on documentation, so you have to go back and forth, right? So when you're talking about onboarding developers, we're going to, our plans is, we're working right now in simplified VS Code installation. And on that, one of the things that you're already going to see is if you click and install the Logic Apps extension, it's already going to install all the dependent extensions. So you don't have to guess which of the extensions is going to be used. But the next step that you wanted is, as soon as you finish the installation, it opens up something for you to say, do you have what it needs to run? Do you have the .NET Core runtime, the functions runtime, the .NET Core, and give you the ability to, from there, install the right versions, right? Because we still have a very strict set of items. .NET Core in a certain version, functions runtime on a certain version. So we test against that and allow you to install the right ones. The other thing is, like, as you see on custom code, we're going to use the same idea for workspace, but then expand to other things. So the ability for you to have like a folder for infrastructure as code that we're going to be touching in a minute, for test, so your workspace is looking more like a solution, right? With logic apps being one of the folders, custom code being the others, and the other things that you might need to use being there, so you know where to put stuff instead of having to decide by yourself. From the implementation of workflows, the main thing that we're going to try to touch now is the management of those metadata files. And when I'm talking about this, it's pretty much connections.json, parameters.json, right? And the relationship between them. So the ability to parameterize that a bit more, to making sure that you're able to things that we're injecting on one of the files, we take care both for the local and for the cloud, right? So for example, having on parameters, the things that is yours, that is user defined, when you are creating a new cloud, we just copy, but when we change it, the ones that we needed to change, like that we introduce, so you don't have to guess what is going to be the next one. And then from automated deployment point of view, there is like a couple of things. First is if you're using Azure connections, you have to fend for yourself of how to create the templates, right? And one of the first things is, once you created the whole connections there, it's pointing to that connections.json, find out what is the Azure connections, generate the templates for you, right? Generate the stamp for Logic Apps application so you don't have to know how to do it. And also help you to based on all those artifacts and all those parameters, how your CI/CD pipeline should be looking like, and I'll generate a template for you. So I think it's like Samuel pointed to a quite important thing, is like give you a template so you can start in not having to start from scratch, and that's the idea on all of that, is trying to templatize that a bit more. So those are the items that we're working today, and that is going to be on the next 6 months or so. We're going to be starting seeing movement on that. There is other things that is also on the roadmap, but that's something that we're going to be discussing tomorrow on the deep dive, right? So there is other areas. And I think with that is what I had, hopefully on time, so no one is going to complain about the drinks. But before that, if anyone has any questions, apart from what is the drinks? No? Mike?
So Wagner, when you show us the inline functions, inline custom code, so we've got a logic app with a recommendation of 20 workflows, but those inline code kind of look like a function. Does that take away from the number of workflows I can run?
Not really, because I think it's like from that point, that recommendation is mainly because of the code start and the amount, depending on the type of connectors you have, the amount of listeners that you have to create, right? Those functions are pretty much going to be HTTP requests. It's almost like an inline logic app that you're just calling from there. So only executed when you request. Mm-hmm. Any other questions? No? Okay. So one last thing, I had some stickers, not many, so during drinks, come to find me and I can set some stickers. Look you up. And that one in particular is the Azure AIS. That's what is in the menu today. Thank you very much. Any of those items you can find.